Alrighty, Mountaineer Nation, I'm going to do something tonight that I usually try to avoid, and that is recording this show too early in the week. But Thursday night, I do have a birthday party for my dad, who is turning 70. He's a 1977 WVU graduate, favorite all-time player, Major Harris. Right alongside up there was Danny Buggs. So if you leave a comment here on this video wishing Kerry Fox a happy birthday, the sheriff. If it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be a me to be a Mountaineer fan. So bleeds old gold and blue just like myself. So I'm recording this video Wednesday night, so hopefully nothing happens in practice that we have any sort of traumatic injuries or anything that changes the narrative for Saturday's game. So I try to record these videos Thursday night, and I would do so after Neil Brown's Kegler show to get any sort of injury report to give you kind of the full scope picture and outlook for Saturday's contest. So I try to continue that now that we have Rich Rodriguez as head coach, but he likes to do his shows at Kegler's on Mondays. So it kind of throws a little things out of the whack for the week for recording purposes, and still not really getting those Big 12 injury reports early enough to really, I feel like, talk about that. But maybe as the season goes along, hopefully we avoid this, but I know injuries are unavoidable if we have anything long-term, so updates on that talk about this story. So with all that being said, about 2 minutes in now, let's get into it. I love bringing these to you, so thanks for tuning in for another edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports. We're now into week 2, ladies and gentlemen, of the 2025 West Virginia football season. Our beloved Mountaineers on the road, 1-0, taking on the Ohio Bobcats, who are 0-1 after Ohio faced non-conference Big Ten opponent Rutgers a week ago in Piscataway, actually 10 days ago from kickoff of Saturday's game. So having a few extra days to prepare instead of the Mountaineers coming on a regular week, Ohio kicking it off on a Thursday night contest. In week 1, 4 p.m. kickoff from Peden Stadium in Athens, Ohio. If you're not able to attend this game in person like myself, you can watch it on ESPNU. The ESPN betting odds on this as of Wednesday night, so it might change between here and whenever this video unveils on Friday morning. So it's currently West Virginia is a 3.5-point favorite, just a 3.5-point road favorite. The over-under set at 58.5 points, and the ESPN matchup predictor gives West Virginia just a 54% odds to win this game. So, as I like to do with all of my preview shows, going to talk about the matchup history. We didn't have any matchup history last week against Robert Morris. We do for this one, so I'm going to talk about that. Let's talk about the weather and the impact that may have potentially in the game, injuries, what's on the line for both teams, what's to watch for when Ohio has the ball, what to watch for when West Virginia has the ball, 3 keys to victory, and get you out with a prediction. So, got a lot of research already done for this game. Can't wait to bring it to you. First off, let's talk about the matchup history. West Virginia is 12-5 in this series, dating back to the team's first matchup all the way back in 1897. This will be only, though, the 3rd time that West Virginia has faced Ohio in Athens. The two teams played each other in Parkersburg, West Virginia in 1898 and then 1934, as well as Pittsburgh, of all places, in 1912. Now, Ohio and West Virginia battled each other 13 of those 17 times from 1897 to 1949 before restarting a series in the 1980s, 1983, 84, and 87, all games played at Mountaineer Field, in which West Virginia won decisively by a combined score of 116-6. Now, the Bobcats came back to Morgantown in week 2 of 2001. Head coach Rich Rodriguez's first season during his first stint at West Virginia. And the Mountaineers, after getting beat soundly by Boston College on the road the week before, beat the Bobcats 20-3, one of just 3 West Virginia wins for that season. Now, this was a 3-game series that old athletic director Shane Lyons scheduled way what feels like back in 2021. West Virginia has Ohio on the road this year, but a home series in 2027 and 2029. So we'll be seeing more of the Bobcats, at least unless any sort of dramatic conference realignment happens that West Virginia's completely blowing up its schedule. But we'll be seeing the green and white back down in Morgantown in 2 years and then 2 years after that. So taking a look at the weather for this game in Athens, Ohio. Just a high of 67 degrees with rain in the morning before kickoff. Shouldn't really impact. I feel like any potential play on the field. I Googled to see if Peden Field, it was a natural grass surface or if it was a turf. It's turf. So it might just be a little bit slick or something during warm-ups. We've seen that before. But shouldn't really impact any play on the field, especially if it's a later game, later kickoff, 4 p.m. So shouldn't have any sort of an impact, just a little bit cooler than compared to last Saturday in Morgantown. Injuries, nothing really to report from both sides beyond Cannon Katzer. Kind of questionable to see if he practices this week. Didn't participate in last week's game against Robert Morris. Him at running back. And then still, things are up in the air as of now Wednesday. Coach Rodriguez said in his press conference, and got some other reports from, I think, Athletic Director Ren Baker saying that they're still trying to do their due diligence with the NCAA with whether or not Jamori Robinson truly is eligible to play for this season. And I'm like, if I will have had it by Monday. Like right now, okay, I'm not gonna freak out about this or anything. But if it just comes down to not return phone calls, emails not being responded to, texts, however, whatever's the process, is this just a phone call by Michael Benson and or Ren Baker to NCAA offices that they're just not responding to this? And it's just really going to come down to whether or not, leadership gives Coach Rodriguez the go-ahead for Jamori to practice and then play. Again, I'm willing to give them through these next 72 hours from when I record this and releasing on Friday. So then by that point in time, 24 hours. But by Monday, Jamori better be practicing. If Jeff Weimer, Justin Harrington, and Ty Edwards are now all practicing and playing, Jamori Robinson better play. Because that's what this judge gave them immediate eligibility. I totally understand the fact of them saying, the potential for restitution, that depending upon how these appeals go, then the NCAA has all ability to go back and vacate all of West Virginia's wins and all of that. I'm willing to risk that. That's just me as a fan. I want to see him. I bet if you polled Mountaineer Nation, and I'd love to know your thoughts, so you can leave your comments here on YouTube. Do you want to see Jamori Robinson by the Pitt game? I do. Whether in return phone calls, emails, whatever, by the NCAA or not. So that's just how I feel. So what's on the line for both teams? So for Ohio, let's talk about the Bobcats first. They've been somewhat of a Power 4 David in the proverbial David versus Goliath matchup over the course of the past 25 years, beating Pitt in 2005, Illinois in 2006, Penn State in 2012, and Kansas in 2016 and 2017. So to add West Virginia to its trophy case, a Power 4 program less than 2 hours away from campus would give that program and fan base not only tremendous bragging rights, but also new head coach Brian Smith something to tout in recruiting against players from not only the state of Ohio, but I would think the tri-state region, Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, everywhere in kind of the mid-Atlantic, states there. Especially after nearly defeating Rutgers on the week prior. If you say, we beat West Virginia and we almost beat Rutgers too, sounds a whole lot better than you went 0-2 against those two Power 4 opponents. So for West Virginia's only lost twice to a G6 or G5, however you want to call it, opponent over the course of the last 25 years. I remember both of these games. 2008 at East Carolina, with Bill Stewart as head coach, Pat White's final season in Morgantown, and 2003 versus Cincinnati, before Cincinnati joined the Big East a couple of seasons later and were at that point in time still part of Conference USA. Otherwise, West Virginia's been very good against its G5 opponents and undefeated against its FCS opponents. So I'm not calling this a trap game, just like Coach Rodriguez kind of scoffed at that question from Mike Ostie in his press conference earlier this week. So but what I will say about this game is I consider still this is a continuation of West Virginia's 2-game preseason in which it's still working out the kinks with all of its new players to find its best 33. So that's not a slight next to Ohio, not at all. I mean, no disrespect here. It's just that by all accounts, West Virginia should be better and win. And but if it's we're gonna have these kind of built-in excuses, but the old adage goes is it's gonna take time. We got to figure out all these again, 80 newcomers to this program. Looked pretty good against a FCS opponent last week in Robert Morris. Now they're going against better competition. I've used this analogy in my last few videos and saying similarly to the way that happened with the basketball team last year. They played a pretty easy matchup in their home opener. Then the next week they played against UMass in their second game. That was like a 15-point game or something. Really good competition against those guys. And then they took on Pitt. So I can see how it's building. So if college football is never going to have a preseason, for this instance and this case with a team with as many newcomers as West Virginia has, then I think this is warranted. If this was 2018's Will Grier West Virginia offense, you don't need this. I would like to see West Virginia going and playing some of these bigger non-conference matchups that happened over Labor Day or even into week 2, still keeping the backyard brawl. I don't want to dive down the rabbit hole here with my argument of why I don't think West Virginia should be afraid to play more Power 5 or Power 4 opponents in non-conference play moving forward. But for this year, 2025, this is perfect. I think this is perfect. Have that home game last week against an FCS game. I'm even okay with West Virginia playing this game on the road. Be it's going to be a packed stadium, crazy fans. It's this stadium seats 30,000 people, y'all. West Virginia in a month's time is going to have to go to 68,000 Lavelle Edwards Field out in Provo, Utah. They're going to have to go to another 50,000 seat stadium at the end of November in Arizona State. So if they can't handle Peden Stadium, I don't know how they're going to do against the rest of their competition for this season. So this is perfect. I love that this matchup is happening. Better competition. Got to go out there and now prove it on the field. So let's talk about it. What to watch for when Ohio has the ball. West Virginia's defense, 3 points per game allowed now after one game, 123 yards per game allowed. Ohio's offense, 31 points per game, 440 yards last week against Rutgers, impressively. So it all begins and ends for Ohio with their redshirt senior quarterback, Parker Navarro, turning 24 in mid-November. 6 foot, 210 pounds, does everything for Ohio, led them to 11 wins last season, one of the best mid-majors in the country, not ahead of Boise State, obviously, but really good G6 program. Last week against Rutgers, he kind of put it all on full display for the nation on that Thursday night contest on Big Ten Network. 21 for 31 for 239 and 3 touchdowns passing, 9 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown rushing. So he did everything that he could for his Bobcats on the road. Did an excellent job in the RPO run game while also hitting 8 different receivers in the pass game. And his best pass catcher, one that West Virginia needs to take note of, number 7 junior wide receiver Chase Hendricks. He was Ohio's leader in receiving with 9 catches for 115 yards, including a long of 26. Navarro also hit redshirt senior wide receiver Max Rodart and redshirt junior wide receiver Ian Pugh for receptions of 24 and 25 respectively in that Rutgers game last week. So there are multiple deep threats on this Ohio team. So in the running back department, if it's not going to Bambi Navarro carrying the ball. Watch for number 5, redshirt senior running back C.A. Bangura. 6 foot, 215 pounds, 16 carries for 86 yards. So what I'm watching for with West Virginia's defense is what kind of cat and mouse game does WVU defensive coordinator Zach Alley have schemed up against Navarro to limit Ohio's offensive chances. I absolutely love this. Listening to his press conference earlier this week, I mean, kind of reminded me in similar fashion of Bob Huggins in a way of like, they get up there and they're like, so what did you think of your performance? Holding him to 3 points, 123 yards for the day. He's like, I'm not good, but not great. I'm just like, dude, you three points, 123. Absolutely, positively, Zach Alley does not accept anything less than perfection. So I absolutely love it. I love the mentality that he's bringing, and you can hear that from within the assistants within the room. So I love this. I love the kind of performance that he schemed up last week, being aggressive, bringing blitzes from all 3 levels. But why I lead this off for this segment is, well, digging into the numbers here, impressively, this is really impressive stat for me, considering, again, a road matchup against whatever you think of Rutgers, and I don't think highly of them. I think they're one of the worst programs in the Power 4. All of Ohio's touchdown drives against the Scarlet Knights spanned 65 yards or more. 65, 75 twice, and 90. Plus, its second quarter drive that resulted in just a field goal before halftime went 82 yards on 13 plays. So they can move the ball at will. They have the ground game, they have the air game, and they have a 5th-year, almost 24-year-old quarterback. So if Ohio can pick up first downs on any downs, it's just how much stock do you put them, doing it against Rutgers. So that's what I want to see is. Now they're going against West Virginia. Now they're going against a Zach Alley defense. And I think West Virginia's players are better than Rutgers on the defensive side of the ball. Though you're playing at their stadium versus Mountaineer Field. So number 2, as I already kind of alluded to, this will provide West Virginia with a better litmus test game for Pitt as well as its Big 12 competition. If we as a fan base are afraid of Parker Navarro and the Ohio offense, how are you going to feel against Eli Holstein and Pitt? Or Jalen Daniels and Kansas, Devin Dampier and Utah, Bear Bachmeier and BYU. West Virginia only gave up 123 total yards of offense last week to Robert Morris, forced 2 turnovers, didn't give up any chicken shit plays through the air like bombs down the field, and had 8 tackles for loss with 4 sacks. I think West Virginia can breathe, knowing that West Virginia is going to take care of business. This is not 2024's defense over, again. I think West Virginia is showing it's got some heroes that, some rising captains. I love what I'm hearing from Coach Rodriguez about him and Russell at nose guard, wanting to keep the gang together. Now has a 50-year senior alongside of him on that defensive line, and Eddie Vesterinen, and then behind them the tandem at linebacker of Chase Wilson and Reed Carrico in the middle stood out last week against RMU. And then rotating both Braden Siders and Curtis Jones, who's just a sophomore at Bandit. So I really like what I saw. From the linebackers, secondary with a stout rush defense, blitzes coming from everywhere, and pretty much lockdown coverage for 4 quarters. So I think one-on-one tackling is going to be pivotal. Again, defending the RPO game, not letting Navarro tear you up running the ball. So it's like, if you're going to have... That's why I feel like, while I did absolutely love David Long in 2018. Awesome. Would put him up against any West Virginia, linebacker. I feel like if you're putting together an all Mountaineer, defense and program history, David Long's got to consider strong consideration. But man, was Tony Fields just absolutely money for his one season in 2021 in just one-on-one tackling against these quarterbacks in the RPO game. And that's what I'm hoping to see out of one of these 2 linebackers as the season progresses. Reed Carrico, Chase Wilson, Braden Siders even at Bandit, even though he's going to be more of a pass rusher, but someone who's not going to overrun in pursuit. Choose the right, kind of angles toward the sideline, or if it's one-on-one, up the middle. Their eyes are going to keep focused, not bite on fakes going one way, but be fast enough that you're not so reactionary and you're a step behind. Because as we've learned against better offenses, and I'm looking at like Utah here in a few weeks, like if you go up against a really disciplined Big 12 offensive line who's going to show different, gap, pulling with the guard, having different tight ends come in different motions, and then you're going to have trickery, fakes every which way, and you don't know who has the ball. It comes down to the linebacker's disciplined eyes, and then bam, shooting like a heat-seeking missile to tackle the ball carrier, not letting them fall forward. Now, I'm not going to be naive here. I think that Parker Navarro, being a savvy enough veteran who's won a lot of games, is going to put up pretty decent numbers in this contest. He's definitely going to do better than Tanner Wall from RMU a week prior, but it's going to be like on those key moments that you need West Virginia's playmakers to step up, and that's where I think these linebackers are going to be very, very important in the analysis, that when we talk about with this post game, that's something that I'm going to watch for. So let's transition and talk about when West Virginia has the ball. Talking about the West Virginia offense, scored 45 points last week, 625 yards of offense. For Ohio, we're talking about a multiple 4-2-5. Isn't every team in college football anymore a multiple 4-2-5 defense? 34 points per game allowed to Rutgers, 399 yards in that contest allowed. For two things that we can take away from that Robert Morris game a week ago to apply to to Ohio. Now, no 2 weeks are ever the same, and the carryover from one week to another, it's pretty much a new season every single week in the preparation for it. But really, if you're any fan who watched that game last week against RMU, it's the two things that you're watching for: cutting down on the penalties, and you can't have 4 turnovers. Fumbles, I feel like, are a little more egregious than interceptions, because interceptions, a whole number of different things can happen. Balls can be tipped into opponents' hands. Just miscommunication between the quarterback and wide receiver, a really great play by the defense. Fumbles, it sounded like, listening to Coach Rodriguez, only one of those fumbles were legitimate. All the others were just really, bad, holding the ball high and tight and letting, just it get undisciplined away from them, and the opponents just hit West Virginia's players. Like the Cam Vaughn one, to me, is just unacceptable. I mean, he was just holding the ball way out here. It was an easy punch out, and it knocked all the way into the end zone. Justin Smith-Brown, he was able to jump on his, but he was trying to change hands. Orrin Singleton Jr. was going down to the ground, but just was holding the ball out in the middle and lost it. And then I think Grayson Barnes's was trying to kind of duck and lay the lumber on a hit, had the ball out down by his belly instead of again high and tight, and he lost it. So can't fumble. Just really can't. I feel like fumbling, sometimes is a bit of just a mental thing, and that's what worked on in practice. The reps, keeping your attention on that as coaches, but also players, and then, teammates staying accountable on everybody out there to not have fumbles. So on the penalties, I had to do a little bit of digging in last week's because I wanted to find out how many exactly. So of West Virginia's 9 penalties last week, 7 were against the offense. And all but one of those 7 penalties were called on offensive linemen. So I think this, I hate to say it, and I don't want to spell doom for this season, but I think this is going to be a trend. I think as long as this offensive line, which again are all pretty much for the all new players, yes, playing at different levels from the G6, or returning starters, or they were sparingly used at other places, so on and so forth. Like, if you're trying to ask them to go warp speed, learning a new offense, new opponents that they really haven't played, against, and like gel and experience, you're going to get penalties. You're going to have false starts. You're going to have holds. You're going to have all this stuff. Now, I think it's just on West Virginia to limit them. Like, it is what it is. I mean, I think that was something that was really great during 2023 and 2024. And if you watch my program at that point in time, I really gave credit to Neal Brown and his staff for being pretty cleaned up. Like, that was a really problem. Same thing with clock management during the early years of Neal Brown. But man, by the time that West Virginia really turned a corner in 2023, and then that was again, you had Zach Frazier, Doug Nestor, and Wyatt Milam, 3 of 5 on your starting offensive line. West Virginia cut down on those holds. West Virginia cut down on those false start penalties. And then I think what was one, Walter Young-Bear got caught in with an ineligible lineman downfield on a screen play. So again, if you want to chalk that up to week one jitters and just this and that, like whatever you want to use as that. I'm watching that. I'm keeping an eye on that. I think that's going to be a consistent theme this season. But if West Virginia can bring that number down, and I think as West Virginia brings that number down, coinciding with the fewer turnovers, we're going to be talking about a West Virginia offense that can reach its potential, which I talked about, in my preseason previews, that's going to score more points per game than last year. That's going to run more plays. That's going to rack up more yards. And then West Virginia can play games that are, in the 30s and 40s that they couldn't do under Neal Brown because of how slow he wanted to play, how he wanted to run a game. So talking about West Virginia's quarterback, Nico Marchiol, I assume that he's going to get the start. We haven't heard anything. The depth chart is already released, and we got pretty much the same depth chart as we did the week prior against Robert Morris. So could Jalen Henderson be the guy who trots out there to start the game? Yes. Could it be Scotty Fox even? Maybe. But I'm going to assume it's Nico Marchiol. He did nothing from that contest last week against Robert Morris that made me question any sort of, there's like disbelief or that he didn't do enough. I thought he was excellent, incredibly efficient passing the ball, 17 for 20 for 224 yards with a touchdown passing. Also added 56 yards on 13 carries and a touchdown rushing. I just think if he can do against Ohio what he did against RMU, look cool, calm, and collected as this offense tries to go warp speed that fast, then West Virginia is going to have a day. It's going to look nice. Again, they can cut down on those two things, penalties and turnovers. So then at the running back position, we know Jaheim White's going to be taking a lot of the bulk of the carries as he did a week ago. But does Sincere Bowers or Clay Ash get those number 2 carries? I don't think either guy did anything last week that made it seem as if he should get fewer carries. I just think Sincere Bowers, on what I saw out there, including his 26-yard touchdown run, deserves a few more. So, Dior Hubbard didn't get any carries last week. Is he kind of like the odd man out? I thought he was going to be the number 2 running back once Jalen Knighton was deemed academically ineligible for this season. Tyler Jacklich did get a carry last week. Or do we see Ty Edwards kind of finally get those short yardage situation carries? I'm just kind of trying to see how this batting order with the running backs in certain situations go. I don't think West Virginia ever really needs to run Jaheim White 4 plays consecutively. There was a point in time, I feel like it might have been the second quarter. I'd have to go back and look this up specifically. And I was just watching. I was like, okay, Jaheim's taken 3 straight carries. He's gotten you a first down or 2 on these carries. Spell him. There's no need to run 4 consecutive times with Jaheim White. Like, I think you can afford to get another back involved into the game. So I'm just still watching the management of the running backs at this point in time. But, I mean, they were effective. They were incredible. Between running backs and quarterbacks, West Virginia ran the ball 53 times for 393 yards last week. That's a 7.4 yards per carry clip. And 5 touchdowns rushing. So if you continue that, if West Virginia can do that week in and week out, they're going to be the best rushing offense in the country. They're going to be one of the best offenses, period, in the country, and they're going to win a whole lot of games. I know that's not going to be possible, but holy moly, they looked good on the ground last week, and I hope they can continue that against an Ohio D that got worked up and down the field by Rutgers of all teams last week. So then at wide receiver, I thought Jaden Bray really impressed as the team's number 2 wide receiver. Grayson Barnes also had 3. But who is this team's second passing, receiving threat behind Cam Vaughn? I think if Cam Vaughn can just hold the ball high and tight, just focus for 4 quarters, he has, the ceiling. And I don't think any of these defensive backs for Ohio are going to be able to, hold water against him in this contest. I could be wrong, but I think that Cam Vaughn can continue to put up 100-yard games against opponents of West Virginia's same caliber or lesser. Now, there's very few of those kind of teams left beyond this contest on West Virginia's schedule, but I think that this team, can prove to be this team's number 1 wide receiver option. I want to see how many more that West Virginia gets involved in this contest. Didn't hear Rodney Gallagher's name last week on a reception. He did have a carry for 9 yards last week, but didn't catch the ball. Does he get involved? I'd like to see Rodney get involved. Does Coach Rodriguez want to go ground heavy as he did against Robert Morris, looking for another fourth quarter knockout punch? I said it on the post game of Robert Morris, and I'll say it again for this, is I think, again, with those 53 carries that they had for 393 yards, it just wore down RMU. And then by the fourth quarter, that's how we saw how West Virginia was able to throw those knockout punches, score 21 unanswered points? Something like that. So can they do they take that same kind of approach against Ohio? I would think so. So that's why, I want to follow that. I don't know if they want to put out all of the creative plays or, get into phase 2 of West Virginia's offense with Pitt looming next week. So still staying a little bit base, a little bit vanilla, and your talent, your effort being better than Ohio's can win the game without you having to be, throwing out every kind of triple option reverse, wide receiver screen, fumble brewski, Statue of Liberty play, hook and ladder. That's what I mean to say here. So that may be something that we see in the Pitt game and then moving forward for this season. I don't know. That's the beauty of college football. So talking about special teams, and this is where I want to kind of stay for, a little bit longer than maybe I usually do. West Virginia kicking, redshirt senior Cade Hensley looked really good. Nailed his field goal 26-yard attempt last week against Robert Morris and all 6 of his extra points. For Ohio, they have a freshman doing the kicking, David Dellenbach, 30-yard field goal last week, was 4 for 4 from extra points. Punting, Ollie Straw, 3 punts last week against RMU. Did have one down inside the 20, but did shank one. So let's see. Ohio had a punt blocked and returned for a touchdown last week against Rutgers. Was really a game changer for them. It allowed Rutgers to go up, I think, 3 scores at that point in time in the first half. And Ohio had to kind of climb out of a hole. Did tie the game up, but I know there's a statistic, and I don't have it for this show, that anyone who has a special teams touchdown, the percentage chance of them winning the contest go up precipitously. If you were watching South Carolina, Virginia Tech this past week, you saw how that played a role in South Carolina turning the tide against the Chokies. On the kickoff return, Preston Fox only had 1 return last week, but for 36 yards and looked electric on the day. Eamon Dennis had 3 returns for 30 yards, had a long of 16. Punt return, here's another one for you. Preston Fox, 5 returns for 52 yards total. That was a 10.4 yards per return average with a long of 28. If he stays there, he's going to have one of the best averages in the country by season's end. And then for Ohio, did not have a punt returned last week. It was Max Rodart who called for a fair catch. He didn't have a return last year at all for Ohio, so would be Ohio's first, if he's trotted out there again, would be his first punt return yardage in his career. So my 3 keys to victory, now that we're about 34 minutes in, I think number 1 is you got to limit Navarro in the RPO game, especially with his legs. If you take him out of the equation and just, can C.I. Bangura beat you? Can any of these, G5 level, G6 level wide receivers beat you? I think that's what Allie's going to want to put this game on, is trying to, rush, keep a spy on Navarro. That one-on-one tackling I said with West Virginia's linebackers, just limit what he does in the ground game, force them to throw, and then kind of go mano-a-mano with West Virginia's secondary. And can you beat those guys? I think West Virginia can. Now, it's Allie's goal. Heard this during the broadcast how many times from Max Starks last week on ESPN Plus about how Zach Allie has this internal, and team goal of forcing 3 turnovers per game. Now, I think that's ambitious. If West Virginia can get to 3 turnovers per game, their odds of winning, again, precipitously increase. And I think that's why Allie then has it. For a program that only, I think, had 11 forced turnovers all of last year, to get somewhere of like 36 or more if West Virginia gets to a bowl game, holy moly, that's huge. But hey, against a team that has a lot of offensive plays, can pick up those chunk yardage, like I said Ohio did last week against Rutgers, the best way to then beat them is force them into turnovers. So I think that will be, pivotal in this contest. But the only way that's going to happen is if they make Navarro, he has a bad day, that West Virginia then forces him having that bad day. And that's how they can do it, by forcing turnovers, tackling him, just frustrating him. The secondary guys locking down his wide receivers, getting them off the field on 3 and out. Rutgers was only able to do that once last week. So then number 2 for my 3 keys of victory is just run your offense. And you might say, Carson, that's the most basic, boring crap I've ever heard. What the heck does that mean, run your offense? So, like I said, cutting down on the turnovers, cutting down on the penalties, wear Ohio down with the run game by getting a good push up front. I gave that in my analysis last week against Robert Morris. I'm surprised I didn't get any more, flack from that in the comments section about, what West Virginia ran for 393 yards, Carson, and 7.4 yards per clip and 5 touchdowns. What the heck do you expect from them? But if you heard Rodriguez, and I think there was some truth to this in his press conference, saying that they got a good push up front at times, but not good enough that gave Jaheim White enough one-on-one chances with guys in the linebacking core and in the secondary to then hit those home runs, to hit those burners that he's taking for 50, 60 all the way to the house. So that's what I mean to say. Sometimes, they were only getting 1 yard, or they were getting knocked back for a yard. As few as those were, West Virginia was consistently picking up over 5 yards per carry, especially on first down, it seemed like, out of a really base spread read option attack that was handed off a lot of times to Jaheim White in that contest. So continue to give that effort on the offensive line, better effort than you did a week ago against better competition, and let's see how West Virginia does, because I think they have all those capabilities with the tandem of backs that they have, and adding in Nico Marchiol as part of the rushing attack. And I think Nico's going to cook them efficiently in the pass game, just like he did against RMU. Rutgers was able to pass the ball successfully down on Ohio, and I suspect he will be able to too, because I think Nico's better than what Rutgers has at quarterback. I think West Virginia's wide receivers are better than what Rutgers has at receivers. Just can they do so on the road instead of the friendly confines of Mountaineer Field? I think they will. I really do. Also, there's going to be a really good contingent of Mountaineer fans at this game, so it's going to feel like a home game away from home. And then thirdly, for my 3 keys to victory, I think win the battle of field position in the return game. Preston Fox, could he have a return touchdown? I think it's just like it's waiting for him. I think he's so close to having some sort of a kick, whether it's a kickoff or in this case, I think it might be a punt. And then can West Virginia perhaps block another punt on Ohio? Are they buttoned up on special teams. And then, the more yardage that you can accrue on your return in your kickoff and punt return game gives your offense short fields. That gives you a better chance to score points. If it's not 6, then it's at least 3. And if you get any sort of blocks, again, really great field position. So win that field position battle through special teams, I feel like, in the return games where West Virginia is going to do it. So, as I said in my preseason predictions, and I'm kind of going to stick by it, even though it was a bit of a sloppy day last week against Robert Morris, that West Virginia is due for one of these kinds of sloppy kinds of contests for a season. And I kind of thought it would come here against Ohio. I don't think I'm going to be so bullish, as to say anything bigger. Even though, could West Virginia go out there and score 7 or maybe even 14 more points than what Rutgers did against Ohio? Yes, certainly can. Given it's a road contest, given there's still a lot of newcomers onto this team, feeling it out, and I think Rodriguez wants to give them the space to be able, through this next game, again, work in as many different bodies to get as best of evaluations as you possibly can on these guys in a game situation setting. I think that this will be a closer game, especially through the first half that feels kind of similarly as uncomfortable as last Saturday. So I would not be surprised if we're talking maybe like a 10-10 game at halftime, that then West Virginia kind of pours it on into the second half. So I'm going to say West Virginia wins this game, and I'm going to say they win it, as the cool kids on Twitter like to say, by 2 touchdowns. So I'm going to say 31-17. West Virginia covers the spread. Even though at a small atmosphere in this stadium, close to home. So I think the Ohio fans are going to be a bit rowdy. I think they're going to be a bit loud. They're going to try and make it kind of feel like, if West Virginia was playing Marshall in that kind of respects. Maybe not so mouthy or loud or anything as the Marshall fans. But I think it'll be, pretty fun game if you're a Mountaineer fan, and especially our Mountaineer Nation brethren who are down there in the southwestern portion of the state. So I think the closer that they can get to this contest, I think it's going to be a great showing. I think it's going to be a really nice day. It's going to make really nice television, I feel like, and West Virginia is going to go out there. And again, might be some sloppy. Might have some penalties, might have some turnovers again, might feel a little bit uncomfortable there in the first half. But I think West Virginia is going to end up winning this contest. Again, not so much so that it's painstakingly going to hurt by the end of the game. It's just going to get real fast once we transition out of this game and then start talking about Pitt the next week. That's where I'm going to be Carson, you're kind of a little bit, laissez-faire a little bit with this past game. Yeah, I am, because West Virginia, if you consider it a top 40 program in the country, should win these games. And I think they should win them, as one commenter said last week on my RMU recap, he's saying it was a C+. I'm like, holy crap. If you thought winning by 6 touchdowns was just a C+ grade, then you're really expecting them to win by 70. So I'm not expecting West Virginia with this team in week 2 to go out there and, again, win by 4 touchdowns or more. Now, again, if this was Will Grier and that 2018 team, or 2011 with Geno Smith, Tavon Austin, and Stedman Bailey, the Orange Bowl team, or, any of the teams of old with, the first go-around, with Rich Rodriguez and Pat White and Steve Slayton, whole different story. But right now, this is kind of what I think is this is an incubation period. Fun word there to say, for West Virginia to get its legs underneath itself, to find what its best players out there. Again, block, tackle, run, do all the things that you need to do instead of being just a group of individuals out on the field. You are truly a team. So this team is gelling, and it's going to take through another week. It's probably going to take even longer into the season, but then it's going to get real, and I'm going to get real serious real fast of wanting to beat Pitt and all these Big 12 teams. If they can win the backyard brawl, might take a bit of a different tone if that's not the case. Don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. I think West Virginia needs to go out there, and win this. I mean, I don't even care if it comes down to a 3-point game. You just win the game, get it over with. But realistically, West Virginia should go out there and beat them by more. I feel like I'm finding a happy medium in between of saying that win by 2 touchdowns, 31-17. So how you feeling about this game? Are you nervous? If you're nervous, why? If you're really overconfident, tell me why as well. I'd love to know your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. As I always say, if you like this video, please like it so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. I know there's a lot of Mountaineer competition out there in the YouTubes and the podcasts and the content creation space. So if you listen to me, if you listen to 3 other people, I don't begrudge anybody out there. So if you like me or you like somebody else, fine, that's great. But I love to have you a subscriber to my channel. I love the comments that you leave so that we can banter back and forth and get some feedback. I love to be able to cultivate that feedback from fans to see how you're feeling. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. So thanks for tuning in, West Virginia, Mountaineer Nation. Hail West Virginia. Let's go and spot that ball. I'll be back Sunday and we'll recap it.